Okay, I've just tested this. It's the same. The thing I just tested is the setup I currently have now, which is I have the headphones resting on the keyboard with the mic pointed in my direction. And in the test, it sounded fine. So I'm going to assume it sounds fine here. Okay? If it doesn't, well, given I currently have no viewers, it's not as if I can get feedback. But hopefully it'll be fine. Anyway, I have it down there because I don't want the headphones being in the way of me eating. I want to eat some breakfast right now. And I don't want to wait to make the video afterwards because I've actually got an idea today. Anyhow, um, like I mentioned yesterday, um, wanna sign in this YouTube account into a Chrome account. Still haven't done that yet. Um, Again, it's my morning. It's actually the afternoon, but regardless, eating breakfast. Nice pumpernickel bagel. Okay, so let's get down to business. So here's what I had the idea to talk about today. So, like a couple days ago, I was thinking about how, you know, there's this claim out there, or was out there, that people only like to watch. Sorry, I'm just adjusting in my chair. Okay, there's this claim that used to be out there, may still be out there, that people only like to watch shows that are like led by the same gender as them. That's that's always it always sounded kind of dumb. Regardless of if there's any truth to that in the general, it's certainly never been for me in my case. And as I was thinking about this, I just started thinking of what shows have I liked that have been led by a female character, or it was an ensemble show, but the primary focus was a female character, or there was a like an even split between main characters, and at least one of them was female. You got the idea. And to date, the list is at over 20 at this point, over 20 shows. But anyway, what I started thinking about today was just how much content we watch. And this is not exactly a new revelation for somebody to think of, but God, we watch so much stuff. So much great stuff is out there. And it's difficult enough to enumerate everything that you've seen with some particular characteristic. But then to just try to enumerate everything you've seen in general, especially if you don't limit yourself to a specific medium like television, and just try to enumerate every single thing you've ever seen, every TV show or even TV episode, every movie, every game, very few in my case, every video, hell, every game, video or not, There's just so much out there. Media is a really significant part of the human experience. And arguably an integral part, because you go back in time to the prehistoric eras, and you get stuff like cave paintings, and there was death rituals. You could argue that any sort of ritual is kind of media like. It's a It's a thing that humans participate in experiencing, um, that has a formal structure and whatnot, like music, you know. Music is the structure of sound, dance is the structure of bodily motion, ritual often involves these things. And there were death rituals, burial rituals, and so on and so forth, way back in the early times. There's evidence of this. They found holes with like tons of, you know, buried skeletons in there. As if humans were deliberately casting the bodies of the dead down the hole. You know? And, oh man. I was just noticing just now, just the limited scope, because you can see down to, like, just below my shoulder, but you can't see any of my hand movements unless I lift them up, up to shoulder length. Anyway, irrelevant. Just, yeah, there's a certain creativity of the human spirit, And again, everything I'm saying right now has definitely been said by somebody else already. I mean, let's go back to the cave, the topic of cave paintings. John Green has definitely covered one particular example of cave paintings being discovered and preserved in his what's it called again? Anthropocene Reviewed. Both in podcast form and in a Kurtz cassette video and now in a book. One thing I love is just the way that ideas just seem to propagate. The idea of memetics has always very strongly appealed to me. The idea, basically, the comparison of culture to biology, specifically its evolutionary nature, with its propensity for little pieces of ideas, i.e., memes. That's where the word comes from. It's in comparison to gene, gene plus mimia to mimic. Anyhow, that whole idea of that pieces of ideas or even whole ideas, they mutate, they propagate, and they continue to exist or stop existing based on how successful they are, how well they appeal to their hosts or are able to take advantage of their hosts. And the interesting thing was that the original context under... Oh, hold on. Sorry. A little bit of hair separation bothering me. Anyhow, the original context that this was brought up in was in actually a very biological context. One of the examples used in the book was The Selfish Gene, was it? It was a book in the 70s. I haven't read it. I just read the Wikipedia article about memes some while ago. But anyhow, one of the main examples used was the idea of hand washing. The idea that you should wash your hands, and the idea that washing your hands makes things cleaner and safer, and ideas of that general category. Well, people who wash their hands are less likely to get sick or to get others sick, and consequently, those who washed hands or were near those who washed hands, interacted with those who washed hands, were less likely to get sick, therefore less likely to die, and therefore those who had that idea or were in proximity to those who had that idea would continue to live on, while those who weren't fortunate enough to either come into contact with the idea or weren't fortunate enough to believe the idea and accept the idea. They and the people they interacted with we're more likely to get sick, more likely to die. And so, in a very biologically related sense, that idea, you know, um, carried into an actual, effect on the population. Those people within whom the idea lives are more likely to live, and the idea is likelier to propagate itself than its opposing idea to not wash your hands and to reject uh, those ideas. And so, over time, those who reject the ideas or are near those who reject those ideas, they die out, and the ones who have the idea become a larger and larger proportion of the population as both they survive biologically, and as it becomes apparent that they do, the idea spreads and or becomes accepted by more and more people. And that was the original context, that we are able to evolve culturally and sociologically far more rapidly than we ever could, through pure genetics or even epigenetics. But yeah, getting back to the. Actually, let me take a bite of food first. Yeah, I'm actually kind of hungry. Mm. I want to take another bite, but I also want to get back to what I was talking about. So, anyhow. um, by the way, if you're wondering why I cough so much, it's because I got this thing called the postnasal drip. Basically, my nose is overactive, and the extra product runs down the back of my throat, i.e., post behind nasal drip. And so, whenever my attention is brought to my throat, I feel what's there, I want to cough it up. And not exactly something you would want to hear, but just to clarify why I cough so much. Anyhow, and that's the annoying thing. The more I think about it, the more I cough, while the more I get distracted from it, the less I cough. So, it has the effect of seeming like it's psychosomatic or something like it, but that's purely because it's an ever-present thing that my response to it is dependent upon my attention toward it. Anyhow, right. Back to media. So, it's such a congruous part of our lives, Just how integrated watching media is, or interacting with media is, to a part of our experience, And there's so much great content out there, And not just in traditional media. I mean, have you watched? There were several channels out there, like Ahoy, Empleman, Frederick Knudsen, that cover topics way in depth, and they have their own unique editing styles, and it's really cool. Like Ahoy's video on the first video game. I love the depth that with that goes into. Although, to be fair, some of these hyper in-depth things might be a bit dry to the perspective of others. But I don't know. I always love things with a whole ton of information, as long as it has some degree of interesting presentation, you know? Or the subject is interesting. Okay, let's be real. The presentation doesn't have to be interesting at all. Have you ever thought that a Wikipedia article looked interesting? But I've read plenty of those. Not nearly as frequent as I've watched YouTube videos, but nonetheless. But you know, there are great artistic YouTube videos out there. Whole animation scene out there, with all different kinds of, you know, there's the storytime animators. Then there's the then there's you know, people who just do funny scenes of their own devising, whether those be long or shorts. There are, and they could be simple or complex. And then there are people who, you know, make reanimations where they take something that previously existed in animation and do their own animation on that. Or similar idea is people who animate an audio track, you know, or take the audio track of something and put an animation to that. You know, people like to do that with comics, with comedians. I mean, putting their humor to an animation, especially to put it into the context of various pop cultural characters. You know, like taking Owl House characters and putting that onto I don't know, any comedian. Let's say John Mulaney. You know, but you get the idea. You're so, man. You know, talking about how hard it is to enumerate all the things that an individual person has seen in their life. Imagine enumerating all the things that just exist. You know, and that's pretty much impossible to do, even with resources like IMDb. You know, with several lists of stuff. You know, Wikipedia has the tag or statement or whatever. You can help with expanding this list or something to that effect. You know, which of course with edgier topics, you know, that leads to a bunch of memes about doing more of the awful act in order to directly expand the list. Not joke. Anyhow, I keep tangentializing. I do tend to do that. But anyway, you know, there's just so much great stuff out there. So many great cartoons, so many great films, you know, and there's literally, like, was it billions? Maybe it's only in the millions, but there's like billions of, excuse me, I must have been eating this bread too quickly. Sorry about that. There's like billions of videos, billions of hours of videos uploaded to YouTube every hour. There's no way to watch all of that. There's no way certainly no way for any individual person to watch all of that. And it's practically impossible to catalog all of that in any means other than the uploading itself, you know? And so, just inevitably, you're going to miss stuff, and I don't like missing stuff, you know? When a YouTube channel I like, that I don't want to miss any videos of, uploads too frequently for me to keep up with, my response has tended to be that I just stop watching the channel because I intend to get caught up with it, and then I never to start from wherever I last was and then watch continuously, but then I never bother to go do it, you know. I'm not good at getting done what I intend to do. Um, but there's so much great content out there, and with all the new content that is out there, it's really hard to get into. I'm sorry, I'm just picking up something on my sock. It's really hard to get into all the old stuff that exists. You know, like there's so many old comedians out there that I got to see growing up because my dad is a film buff. You so I got to see all those black and white comedies. You know, with Buster Keaton, Harold Lloyd, Charlie Chaplin, the Marx Brothers, Lon Hardy, even Charlie Bowers, who isn't very well known, Fatty Arbuckle. I didn't see very much of Al St. John, but I've seen a bit of that in the Keystone Cops, but just not as much. Would Georges Méliès, be considered comedian? I don't know, but he was definitely a huge pioneer with film. Before him, it was mostly just the Lumiere's train, Lumiere brothers video train, and various scenes walking by. Film wasn't used very narratively initially, but it had so much potential, and Méliès really helped and realized that. He was the pioneer of many special effects. And he, if I recall correctly, he was the one who brought the idea of using sets to a film, and costuming and stuff like that. I don't know. There might be some precursors, but he was definitely a major force behind that. I'm fairly certain he's the one who had the idea of having several takes of the same actor be on screen at once. Cutting that together so that for example, there's this one Méliès film where there's this character played by Méliès himself. He often acted in his own films, and the character would there was like a big I don't know what you would call it, big thing up on the wall behind him, depicting a whatchamacall, depicting well, basically a music, what's it called, the staff, the series of horizontal lines, depicting a big staff. I'm gonna call it a staff, or staff bar, whatever the hell it's called, up on top, and and the character pulls off his head and throws it up there to land and effectively be the notation of a note. And then the head, I don't know, either regrows or was immediately replaced, and then he throws it up again, and so he flings his head up to make several heads representing several notes, and then all the heads individually singing. Of course, there isn't a soundtrack to that because this was the pre-sound era, but very funny idea. And ideas like that, they weren't used in film before him. He was really good at coming up with stuff like that. He often liked to play a devil character. His films were mostly fantastical in nature. And they helped spawn so much important stuff in the creation of film. But unfortunately, after, what was it, the First World War, people were much less interested in fantastical films and wanted stuff that was much more realist, and so the popularity of his films died out, and eventually he closed down. But yeah, there's so much stuff that you could watch. I don't think I've seen a single episode of Doctor Who, either old or new series, aside from Blink, which my cousin showed me, and I really enjoy that episode, and would like to get into watching Doctor Who at some point, but I just haven't gotten around to it. There's so much old stuff out there that I have seen that most people probably haven't, but there's also so much stuff that plenty of people have seen that I haven't. I mentioned I mentioned Doctor Who, but also, you know, I've seen barely any Star Trek. I've watched a couple of the newest movies, which okay, but um, I've seen like one or two episodes from the old Star Trek TV shows. I caught like one or two of them on television. One or two of the Next Generation. Once when I was a kid, but I pretty much haven't seen it since. And then like within the past couple of years, I was in a hotel, and the channel that came on the TV happened to be playing uh, old old episodes of the original show. Uh, what's the common term that people use for Star Trek? The original show. Because Next Generation TNG, but then Star Trek the original series. Is it just that the original series TOS something like that? I don't remember. Anyhow, there's all sorts of this stuff that I haven't seen. I have seen all of Monty Python, because that was something that my dad watched growing up, and also I think my mom did as well. My mom likes British comedies. I've seen Monty Python, but also Jeeves and Wooster, Rumple of the Bailey. Now I'm just listing off things I've seen, but you get the point. There's just such a wealth of content out there, and there's only so much we can grasp because there's only so many hours in the day, And yeah, I mean, like, there's just when you sit back and just think of it all, just all that stuff out there, so much of it good, yet simply by the finitude of time, inaccessible, depending on how you choose to spend your time. It's just so much we'll miss, Not even thinking about, all the stuff that'll be made long after we exist, I mean, like, long after we die. For any individual one of us. Just getting some crumbs. But, yeah. I don't know, I'm just starting to peter out, and I'm seeing that I'm almost up to a half an hour, so I think I've got plenty of content in this video. I could always elaborate on this on another day. It's a topic that could easily cover multiple videos. So I think I'm just gonna leave it there, and hopefully the audio on this was fine. Alright, see ya.